So the Hobbit movie is about to come out, and I decided to read the book again because I read it when I was about 15 or 16 years old, and I wanted to read it again so that I could really enjoy the movie. Um, First, I'm gonna read what the back cover says. It says Bilbo Baggins was a hobbit who wanted to be left alone in quiet comfort. But the wizard Gandalf came along with a band of homeless dwarves. Soon Bilbo was drawn into their quest, facing evil orcs, savage wolves, giant spiders, and worse unknown dangers. Finally, it was Bilbo, alone and unaided, who had to confront the great dragon Smog, the terror of an entire countryside. That's pretty much it, and it really is as simple as it says in the back cover. It is first and foremost a typical uh, fantastic adventure. It's very simple. It's not really elaborate because it doesn't need to be. Now, I have to say right now, and don't hate me because of it, but I do have to say, I'm not a fan of Tolkien's writing. I think he was a complete genius in what he created and what he did. It's just incredible, astonishing, really, that he managed to create a culture in the way that he did. But to me, he's just not my favorite kind of storyteller. I don't know. I feel his writing is a bit boring for me, and I don't mean it in a bad way. I think he is really good in some aspects, in some things, but particularly to me, he's just a bit boring and a bit overly descriptive, I guess, and that's mainly my big problem with The Hobbit and with Lord of the Rings as well, but especially with The Hobbit, because with Lord of the Rings, there's a lot more suspense and a lot more action going on. There's battles, there's intrigue, but The Hobbit is not that action packed, I guess. So there's just not a lot of room for suspense or thrill, or it doesn't really make you want to read it that much. So I guess I would describe my experience reading The Hobbit as a good reading experience overall, but it's not an experience that I would love to repeat in the near future. I guess it's a book that is a timeless classic, and I think people should read it, but it's not exactly a book that will keep you up late turning the pages and wanting to find out what happens. It's really predictable as well. It's really predictable how what's gonna happen with the dragon and with everything. I think also another problem that I had, well, it's not really a problem, but something that I didn't love about The Hobbit was that there were some things that were very, very described. There were some passages in the book that were overly descriptive, and then there were some others that were just not descriptive enough. So the more exciting things in the book were just not, they didn't have enough relevance to me. For example, the part where Bilbo discovers the ring and steals the ring from Gollum, that was very brief. That was too quick for me. Um, and on the other side, there were some bits where they're just traveling. That's pretty much what they do in this book, in The Hobbit. They just travel. They just go along the countryside. And it's very descriptive of the landscape. For example, it's just too. It was just too boring for me how he just describes and describes and describes, and he describes beautifully, but he doesn't really capture the attention of the reader. Um, I think the characters are good. I think some of them lack some character. That's kind of ironic. Some of the characters lack some character. They don't have that much personality. For example, the dwarves. There are some of them that are memorable, but overall, I think the dwarves are not exactly the best characters. I think Bilbo is a very strong character. I think Gandalf was my favorite character. I think he was really good. They The characters do have a very personal voice, and they do feel lifelike in the way that they speak, and the way they express themselves, and the way they act and react. But overall, I feel like this is not exactly a character driven sort of book. I do have a problem with the villain of the story. Well, I wouldn't know if I could even call Smog a villain. Smog is the dragon that lives in the mountain at the end, and he's, well, I'm not gonna ruin it for you, in case you haven't read it or you haven't seen the movie, but he is kind of like a very a very he's very present throughout the book. You know, he's very feared, and um, he's described as being really mighty and powerful and horrible, but we see actually very little of him. So he's not really that strong as a character. So I found that Smog was a bit a bit bland. Like he didn't have a lot of weight in the book. So that's, I think, I felt that part was a bit weak. Now, overall, I think The Hobbit is a good read. I think you should read it, but uh, you should really be careful because it's not exciting. It's not that suspenseful. It's not. Um, I think it's an enchanting book. It's very charming. It has a lot of spark in certain descriptions and in certain characters, but overall I think it was just not attractive enough. I think the story is very simple, and that is good, but when you have a story that is so simple, you need to make it shine with certain things, and I think this was just a bit boring for me. But overall, I think I like The Hobbit, and well, tell me what you think.